Hello, my name's Mikey Please. I'm one of the co-directors and co-writers of Robin Robin.
Hello, my name's Dan Ojari. I'm the co-creator, director and writer of Robin Robin.
And welcome to the studio tour
At Aardman Animation.
Our role is like a crossroads between all the departments, so we make sure that everything is going in the right direction to serve the story and to look as beautiful as it can be. One of the other things that we do is we perform out the whole film in live action, so we do what we call lavs.
Usually it's recording yourself, act out what you think their performance would be.
Sometimes 6 or 7 characters at a time, which we'll then edit and try to get to talk to each other.
They often look really ridiculous and kind of silly, but they are a really important part of the process.
Things.
I was trying to think what would be like a dream job for me and Mikey to make, and it kind of dawned on me that a Christmas special is like a perfect project, because I love that sense of tradition and that families once a year gather around and watch an animated short as a family.
I mean, we've always wanted to make a musical. Dan and I absolutely love musicals.
And it's just been really fun to use the lyrics to help tell the story, but also add an element of oddness to the whole film.
The music is as nuanced as the emotions of the film, which go from being very loud and playful to being, subtle and dramatic and sad.
It was an absolute dream to work with the actors that we somehow managed to convince to work on our film.
Richard was wonderful to work with. He'd often find a little gem within a line that we hadn't meant to be funny, but he would sort of open it up and do something to it that would crack up the studio.
This has been really fun, and I think it really shows in the final film, hopefully.
Hi, I'm Dave Alex, and welcome to the studio tour. I have the great pleasure of being the director of photography on this wonderful project, Robin Robin. So basically, the role of director of photography is to tell the story visually, using all the tools of photography. The camera position, the lens, but most importantly, the lighting. Quite an important scene in the film is the burrow. This is the basis of the film. It's about family life and how you might lose that and become lost in the outside world. So it's very important when I was lighting that scene is to actually create that sort of sense of warmth with nice soft backlighting there just to get the rounded feel to these wonderful little innocent characters. The wonderful thing about this film is there have been so many different moods and so many different techniques used to tell the story. Every scene has its own style, its own palette of colours. It was a voyage of discovery for all of us, really. But we've always been very pure about it. Everything we've shot in this film is actually created on the studio floor. Whether it be smoke, flames, everything is actually animated by hand. This film is very, very different to a traditional Aardman film. It's full of completely new characters, new shapes, new sizes, new colours, and certainly new textures. It's been a great thrill actually to work with other medium. I think the public are going to love this film, and we've absolutely loved making it. And I think we've come up with something quite different and quite pleasing. Did that make sense?
Hi, I'm Simon Farrell. I'm the art director on Robin Robin, and welcome to the virtual tour. My role involves talking to directors to try and get a feel for what this world needs to look like. We had a very stylized series of artworks that came through from the production designer, sort of in the 2D illustrated worlds. So we tried to figure out a way of incorporating those designs and that look into the 3D world. What we did was we tried to make those things by hand so that they naturally had slight imperfections, and then that lended itself to that man-made, crafted look. Everything had a kind of wonk to it, which I think worked really well. We've tried to use real materials to keep them in their sort of purest form. So we've used a lot of fabrics and a lot of things with fibers in them, like floristry paper for all of the leaves. I look at all of our props and the stuff that the guys make, and they're just really beautiful things. It just magically transforms the set. The outcome speaks for itself, it's really, really worked. I hope you guys have enjoyed the tour, and I really hope you enjoyed the film. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Ian Whitlock, and I'm the supervising animator, and welcome to Robin Robin. I start at the very beginning of production, working with the characters to define their movements and their personalities. This is always some of the most fun time to have because you really get a chance to play around, to find the characters and just try out lots of different ideas.
Oh, hello.
Some of my early tests were done animating Robin without bending her legs. I tried walking her like a normal human being, and it became apparent quite quickly that it was better to go with a more naturalistic kind of bird way. Animating any character, having a voice like Gillian's is always a bit of a gift, really.
Oh, oh, I see.
It can really strengthen the performance. It's always great to work with such a great voice cast. This film is very different than any film I've worked on at Aardman. With this being a musical, it just meant that you could be broader with everything and you could be more stylised, which was a lot of fun to do.
Hello, my name's Anne King. Welcome to the studios. I'm going to give you the model making tour. My role is to oversee the building and design of all the puppets on the film. So on Robin, we've used felt, which is something that's new to Aardman. This is how the felt starts off, and it's a kind of loose wool. We've used a technique called needle felting, where we take the wool and basically you stab at it until you can form a nice, tightly packed piece of felt. You can actually use it to sculpt with and create shapes. So this is where we ended up with Robin, fully felted now. It has given us a really nice amount of movement on the head, and we can get a really good expression out of Robin. And here's another example of a felted puppet, Magpie. And here's some tiny little mice that we felted as well. Thank you very much. That's it from me. I hope you've enjoyed your quick tour of Aardman puppet making and introduction to felt making.
Hi everybody, my name is Keith Blackmore, one of the producers with the Vancouver Spark Animation Festival. We have our live Q&A here, pre-recorded, and we're going to be talking to a couple of gentlemen from Aardman Studios about Robin Robin. When we look at this show, Robin Robin, it's really a truly wondrous, impressively ambitious stop-motion film that's really designed for the holidays. But when you watch it, you realize that this is the kind of film that we all can enjoy year-round. It's coming to Netflix this November. It's a film for all ages. And I would like to introduce to you our two guests, Dan Ojari and Mikey Please. Welcome, Dan and Mikey.
Hello.
Hello.
Thank you very much.
Thanks so much for having us.
Real pleasure. Now, let's go back to the genesis of this film. You both wrote and were directing it, but how you came up with the idea? How did you pitch this to Aardman?
Yes, many years ago.
We've been developing the story for quite some time before we pitched it to Aardman. We kind of we always thought it would be an amazing thing to make a Christmas special. This is like a 30-minute Christmas special, and in the UK, and I think across the globe, these sort of animated Christmas specials have a really nice sort of place in, I don't know, in just like the culture or like almost like the ritual and the tradition of watching one every Christmas. So we grew up with watching The Snowman and all the Wallace and Gromit films that inspired us as Christmas specials. So we always felt that would be an incredible thing to do, to tell a story on that stage. And we sort of thought, what about a story about a Robin? And, we sort of developed it sort of quite, just as a kind of a story that we both loved. And we kind of told it to our friends for quite some time. So it kind of existed as a kind of little Christmas story that we'd tell. Probably.
Yeah. So probably for about 4 years, I think we were just sort of telling it to like people at parties at around Christmas time, and they would sort of either walk away, depending on how well the story was going, or we'd get to the end. And about the time that we were able to complete the story without people walking away, we're like, okay, I think it's ready. And then we took it to Animasia Animation Festival, where we quite serendipitously cornered Sarah Cox, who's one of the development producers here at Aardman, just in the canteen.
I know Sarah. I've met Sarah, yeah.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
well, I mean,
She's
And I know the canteen of which you speak.
yeah, like the
Okay.
corner sofa. So it's there. I think they're going to put a little plaque on that
Yeah.
corner sofa now, and say this is the place where it all began. But yeah, we had made a little storybook version of it, which we sort of read to her amongst the busy background sound of people eating, and sung a song to her as well. And I
It
think
was a bit surprising
good.
because it had existed just as our project that we had for ages, and we'd been slowly like writing a script and a treatment and getting some concept art, but we'd never pitched it really to anyone like properly. So
Right.
when we presented it to Sarah, we were sort of surprised ourselves at like how clear the idea was. You know, comparatively, when we've got a lot of ideas, but that one just seemed.
Loads. Would you like one?
We actually presented some other ideas.
Well,
Sarah,
I know Peter Lord's always in that same canteen. Did you meet up share with him there?
I
At the
don't
time?
think
He wasn't there, was he?
There that year. Oh, he was definitely there. Yeah, he was there every year, but
But
he wasn't in the canteen at that moment.
No.
But
Oh yeah, okay.
It was,
Now,
it was a really lovely moment, and I think our enthusiasm for the project, it was just so nice to see
Sarah
Sarah
reflected.
Yeah, Sarah sort of instantly got the same enthusiasm about the characters and the sort of setup for the story.
well, is this the first project you've had together?
No.
Oh, with Aardman or
No, the two of you, Mike.
Well,
Yeah, you and Dan and Mike.
Gosh, if only. If only. We've been working together for a long time. We met at university, and we were both making stop motion films, and we would work on each other's projects, and then after we both went to the Royal College of Art as well. We made short films there, and afterwards we shared a studio, and then as a sort of way to like share equipment and things like that, and we formed a studio called Parabella, which is a sort of a moniker under which we made a bunch of like commercials and shorts and music videos and things like that, alongside developing kind of long form narrative projects.
Okay, so that's why you're so simpatico. That's why you guys are like, yeah.
That's why we're wearing weirdly matching shirts.
We've done pretty well today. Usually we come out,
awful.
especially for these kind of evasion events, we come out in the exact same colour.
Well, I'm an identical twin, so I get it. So.
Are you?
Yeah,
Oh.
yeah,
Cool.
yeah. So yeah, the brother of a different mother. That's what you have.
That's nice. Yeah, I think about it.
Well, it's a lovely story. This mouse who takes in this orphaned robin, really, and that juxtaposition of raising this bird as a mouse. It's so funny, but not just raising him as a mouse, but then you see them pilfering and behaving like the mouse, pilfering little crumbs of food and bits and bobs from around the house. It's such a clever little story. But I think what really stands out for me, I mean, you have this great story, but it's that style. Now, Aardman's animation is renowned for, the traditional plasticine, but instead you've chosen needle felt or some felt type of work. How is that? How did you come to do that decision, and why did you choose that?
Well, I mean, I think the sort of the visual distinctness, perhaps, of Robin to perhaps the traditional canon of Aardman's work is lots of different factors, and certainly like needle felting is a big part of it. I mean, there's a huge tradition, I think, a growing brilliant tradition of needle felt stop motion, and there's innately something quite seasonal and wintry and warm about that kind of fuzziness of a character, and it lights in an incredible way, which it sort of absorbs, and the light kind of glows through it, which is something we really look for in a material when we're making
Right.
that.
Yeah.
But how did the needle felting?
I think, I mean, partially it was just because it seems like a very just like a really wonderful material to use, but there was also we had a bunch of Christmas decorations, and it's we actually took them into our second pitch to Aardman when they were sort of more interested in the idea, and we came with a bit more stuff. We brought little needle felted Christmas decorations.
Oh,
This one?
oh, there we go.
Is that it?
Right.
Actually,
I mean, that's sort of
something else
a bit of
entirely.
Mexican folk art, but that is still needle felt. But
Right.
yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's a thing in America, or in the Americas or whatever, but definitely in the UK, there's like
With
a
Mikey Heavy. Oh, my.
having,
There we go.
All the real
Awesome.
guides. That's
having-
actually
yeah.
Love it.
Having needle felt like Christmas decorations, and there's just something very endearing about them. Even very simple characters, they seem to have a lot of I don't know, sort of a lot of life to them.
Yes.
And one of the things that excited us, just from a kind of like an animation point of view, is that using material, like if you lose what the material is when you're making stop motion, you can kind of lose the magic of stop motion, because stop motion often, I think, works at its best when you know what that material is, and plasticine is a great example. Like everyone's played around with plasticine, you know what it is, but then it's moving in such a lifelike way that there's a sort of magic trick that goes on there. Like, I know what that material is, and it shouldn't move like that. It shouldn't be living and breathing, but it is. And I think that's what you get with needle felt, like just sort of sort of intrinsically, because it's very clear the material, what it, and the kind of tactile nature of it.
It justifies the pain you go through.
Well, I was gonna say, I mean, yeah, because plasticine is more malleable. You can mold it and shape it. But so how was the like? The felt has a distinct
do
look.
it with this actually, but you often, if you're going to sculpt with it, you sort of sculpt with the felt, and then you have to stab it with a little needle to keep it where it is and to compact it. So actually, that the animators, especially for the cat, who's got this like mouth that can open wide, and it's actually quite sculpted, that. So a lot of the techniques that they used in plasticine, they applied to the cat's face, but instead of just molding plasticine, they had to sort of sculpt the wool and then stab it with a needle 1,000 times to keep it in place.
And someone's role was that. Someone has is that in the credits, the needle stabber?
Dan described it as getting rid of tiny little bits of anger, which is usually probably directed at us. Like, fine.
Sounds like a job for my granny. The other thing, which was really visually appealing, was and kind of mind-boggling looking at it, is of course whenever you get special effects. And I noticed there's 3 really amazing elements. You have this snowball fight, you have this firework display, and then you have that icy river, this fast-moving ice river. What were you guys thinking creating these kind of special effects? And more than that, also, how did you do those effects?
Good question. Well, I mean, certainly, we'd embrace this needle felting and the wool and the tactile nature in the characters, and we always wanted that very center of screen. But we also wanted to find a way to kind of embed that in every aspect of the world. So, yeah, we shot all real elements for all of those 3 things you described: the snow, the fire, and the water. And we shot those all on rostrum cameras. Nice. With we'd use them like 2D reference, and then we'd build up like that. And then the way that it was integrated was, so far as I know, quite unusual, and it worked really well, was to shoot the film in stereoscopic. So we actually shot most of the film as if it was a 3D film. So we did the left eye and the right eye on all of those. And what that did is it gave depth information on all the sets. So we were able to then put all this quite flat rostrum animation, but integrate it in a real way. So as if it was actually within the place, So in order to do that, usually if we hadn't shot the rostrum, you'd have to like roto out every blade of grass and put the snow behind it. But because of this depth map information that our VFX supervisor, John Biggins, I think he just came up with it because he was like, he wanted to find a way to do it. And he's like, he thinks this will work. Was able to generate that sort of depth information and basically integrate it like it was a 3D CG film.
What an interesting way. So they composited the 2 shots then. And
that's right, yeah.
Yeah.
But everything in camera.
They would use.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, they would use one. If it's like the left and the right eye, they always used, say, the right eye for the hero kind of shot, but the left eye would give extra depth information, so then they could.
So it's actually, so it's all shot in camera. So yeah, okay. So it's more like
Well, it's a way of basically every effect in the film is an element that is shot in camera, but it is still composited together.
right.
And the depth map that they created with this left and right thing was just a very like efficient and sort of creative way of embedding it in, I guess.
Yeah.
But I think the overall impression of, you know, especially that snowstorm, which is like, I think one of the most successful kind of uses of the effects in the film, is these like swirling snowstorms as Robin kind of gets lost in it. That is, you know, it's just a brilliant collaboration between like a really old traditional technique of like animating wool on multiplane, and then these amazing VFX sort of talents that can sort of embed it in and kind of make it look like it's really there. And
Well, that's what I'm trying to connect that in my mind, because as an animation historian, you know, understanding what they did in the past and what they're doing digitally today in the future. But you've gone back, you've reached back, and you're combining and utilizing these old tools, especially with the Rosten camera, the stereoscopic, but also, like you said, with even a multiplane kind of shooting.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it was just a sort of rule that we made, and we thought, well, it's probably gonna, if we can achieve it, to just have every element in the film shot in camera, so there's no like CG created elements.
Right.
We just felt that it would be like a sort of good way to limit what we can put in our film, and hopefully the end result would look great. And the VFX team are just so fantastic, and they completely nailed it really in terms of.
Yeah, so that was the thing. Like, Michael, is this 2D or 3D? Because it has that felt look, the feel, and it blends in so well. So, for example, like the firework display, that's all felt.
Well, it's so every element, even like the explosions out, each one of those is an individually animated smoke trail. That, you know, some of them are duplicated up and stuff, but it's just a brilliant collaboration between the animators that were animating on multiplane and the VFX team, who are really, you know, craftsmen in their own right. So they, it was, yeah, that was great. And then also you mentioned like the water ripples and stuff like those things. That one we shot actually in camera, right? Those sort of like perspex.
Oh yeah, I mean we had so many different. It was almost like every shot had a different technique though for the water, because it was, each one was like a little puzzle, you know. And sometimes like, should we just CG the water? I'm like, no, we've got to find a solution. And particularly like the waterfall in the opening sequence, I think there were so many discussions.
That was mad. The amount of meetings we had.
Testing.
But actually, the thing that we did in the end was like, it's wool. You know, so there's a scene where the egg falls into a river, and it's kind of this rolling stream. But actually, it's quite lo-fi, like the way that we did it, which was like running wool, like pulling it across,
big sheets of it,
and then also putting these bits of perspex that had been like slightly warped over the surface of it, so it had this reflective woolen look. Yeah. And actually, to look at it, you know, I mean, yeah, it was pretty lo-fi, but
it works. That's the thing.
It works really well, and again, it's just trying to approach everything like, how would you do it in camera? And
well, that's what I like, because you're sitting there problem solving, and you're looking, how can we do this? And this is what they did back in, you know, 20, 30 years ago, and for 100 years of filmmaking was it was a craft, it was a guild, and let's get in the garage and let's figure this out, cobble it together and make it work. Now it's all about just using a mouse and a digital mouse, that is.
The VFX team, like they love that that kind of approach just as much as us, and like they could make beautiful CG water that would, you know, they could do all that, but they knew, they were like, no, we got to make this look like everything is shot in camera, and so they would always want real stuff to work with.
Yeah, they were always very happy to be given material to work with, because I guess it innately does stuff that you're not going to expect, you know, and it has those little imperfections built in which are charming as a whole. And
yeah, no, it's brilliantly done, amazing, great background on that. Let's talk about the voice actors. I didn't recognize, I don't know a lot of the voice actors, but I did of course recognize Gillian Anderson.
Oh yes.
And She was the cat, of course. But there's some brilliant voicing. And did they do their own singing as well?
They
Yeah.
did. They
Yeah, they
did.
did,
Yeah. Everyone stepped up fairly willingly. Sometimes a little surprised to be.
In a good way?
what we broke them into, I think, because it was amazing. I mean, we sort of set out to make a musical in a sort of unconventional way, I suppose, and we just figured if we got amazing musicians that we love, and writing kind of fun songs, and sort of actors that perhaps that wasn't what they were known for. We weren't casting actors because we were like, I've got a big singing, musical background, but we wanted their character, it to feel like a song that their character would sing, so that it wasn't as important that they could like belt loads of amazing songs out. They just felt we wanted this feel that these are real characters that are singing these songs in this world, just to, it's part of it. So,
well, you mentioned earlier. Sorry, go ahead. Well, I was going to refer earlier. Mikey mentioned at the pitch with Sarah Cox that you sang to her.
That's true. That's true. Yeah.
So you wrote all the songs too.
We
getting the banjo ready? What do we have here?
Yeah. Oh, we were going to sing
to
you, if you don't mind. No.
I'd love it. I would absolutely love it if you did.
No, I don't think. I think the audience would tune out. But we wrote the lyrics, but we worked very closely with the bookshop and the musicians who composed them and turned them into palatable on the ears.
Well, there's that one where all the mice are frolicking through the house, and it's at the same time it's familiar, but it's different. It sounds like something I should know. Like from a childhood nursery rhyme, and it's in that regard that's brilliant if that's a fresh new song, because that's what you want. You want that kind of earworm that we all can just pick up and go. And I wish I'd written down the words because I'd be singing it today. Yeah.
Well, it's funny because it's such a great storytelling device having songs in your film, and because you can also, like we wanted the melody of the Sneak song to feel quite simple and kind of catchy, because it was like the song that the kids sing, so it should be their song. There should be like a simplicity to it, and the words that are in it, they should be like simple words, simple rhymes, and like a clear, fun melody because we wanted it to be like a kid's song, and I think that's why probably it has that earworm nature, because that was the intention that we wanted to express with it as well. And say like Magpie's song is more like baroque and more like a kind of show tune, because that's what he's expressing with his song.
Right.
So that was a whole other level of storytelling that, it was our first venture into musical storytelling, but that whole side to it is just such a gift if you can like figure it out and make it work within your story.
It's so true. As you're talking, it made me think of Toy Story 2, and there's a song in there, her song, and by having the song there, it actually it's better storytelling than actually if she had spoken and explained things, and that's what your film is doing.
That song, it's a tearjerker.
That is that film, isn't it? If you had
and without that, but because then you have not just the music, but also the visual. The storytelling visually, it just works so much better than just a narrative and just speaking words. So it's great. Tell us about the band that did the final.
The Bookshop band. They're a kind of musical duo, based in Scotland, but who we've worked with on many projects as well. So they're kind of close collaborators, and we're really keen to bring them into this as well.
And they started right from the beginning when we kind of got green lit and we were writing the script and figuring out the kind of initial storyboards. They were also kind of sketching out melodies and songs just to kind of like exploratory really, but that meant that from the music was sort of part of figuring out the story, was part like figuring out the music as well in the backdrop, and I think that resulted in in a kind of story that's very linked with the music.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that was a real asset to the whole project, to have Ben and Beth making these like beautiful melodies and little scores to these moments of bespoke moments of the film, and then you could edit them into the animatic, and you had like even though it was like rough boards and maybe not even the correct boards, you had this beautiful bit of music that said what you kind of wanted to say in that moment.
Yeah. So it really like fed into the storytelling. So we'd sort of consider them as part of our story team very much. You know,
well, it gives it a tone that you don't get otherwise, right? It gives that.
Yeah.
musical
I mean, otherwise you're kind of like,
Yeah.
which is fine in certain respects, but you're like taking score from other films and using scratch score just to kind of give you feel. But if you can, you know, Ben and Beth are amazing at just being able to turn around a beautiful, almost like finished piece of music very quickly. So they would, you know, for the prologue scene where the egg, you know, the egg falls and all that bit of music, they came up with that really early on, and we sort of figured out the boards, and that didn't really change for like right from the beginning. And what it gave us is like every time we screened the animatic, which always had like thousands of holes in the story, and you know, there's so much to work out, but you always started with this like really great intro, which is almost, you know, I mean, it's a rougher version, but it's kind of what you see in the finished thing.
Yeah. So it helped legitimize what would also be quite a
making it a Christmas musical.
Yeah.
Right, there you go. Well, I think now it would be appropriate that Mikey does some singing.
Oh.
Yeah, take it away, Mikey.
Okay.
I should have a
I get a little God, I'd love to keep you know, I'd have to call my agent and then shit.
Oh,
you know,
yeah.
it would be so complex.
If it was a duet, Keith, I'm sure.
Well, you could you could do a duet. Yeah.
You know, I was thinking,
we're not averse to that. Oh, with me? No way.
we will if you will. All right.
Oh, well, this is a real pleasure been talking with you, and we have really enjoyed the production session as well. We're so excited to be able to see this on Netflix coming in November. And as I mentioned, this is a film for all ages and all times, not just for the holiday season. It's something that everybody can enjoy. So thank you, Dan. Thank you, Mikey. It's been excellent.
Thank you so much. What a pleasure.
Yeah,
That's lovely.
Thank you, Keith.